Welcome, you are listening to Marketing O'Clock. Just stay tuned. Digital marketing news, but let's get specific. Digital ads, SEO and analytics, social media and more. Pretty much everything that'll make your website perform. With new shows every Friday. We give you the news with sass and puns and definitely hot takes. Thank you for tuning in. You know what time it is. It's officially Marketing O'Clock. Settle in, sit back, keep it locked.
Hey there, I'm Christine Zernheld.
AKA Shep, and I'm Greg Finn.
And it is officially Marketing O'Clock.
In a little bit different format today, we have big news as we are moving to a new studio and to a new day.
Yes.
Our famous Friday news shows will be happening on Monday.
I hadn't thought about the giving up the famous Friday.
I got a new slogan. Famous Monday news shows. We're moving to Monday to try to have fresher news so that we record on Friday, get all the news from the week, and then you still have it right there in your inbox, ready to go for the week. Get everything that you need to cover, to know from the previous week. But we didn't want to leave you hanging this week.
Right.
So we're doing something a little bit different here. We're going to do a deep dive on a topic, just Shep and myself. Shep, that topic this week is?
Smart bidding.
Smart bidding and Google Ads specifically,
Yes.
Let's say. So we didn't want to leave you with no show. So we've got a bonus show, and then the regular Marketing Clock will be in your podcast player of choice or YouTube on Monday. Okay, so we're going to cover how we use smart bidding, what it is, all the details you need to know about smart bidding. So Shep, I think a great question is within Google Ads, I see this with some agencies that we still take over or kind of consult with. What exactly is smart bidding?
So there's 4 smart bidding strategies in Google Ads. I would say to define it, it's a bid strategy that has conversions in mind when it optimizes your campaign. So the 4 are target CPA, cost per acquisition, target ROAS, TROAS as some call it. And I would argue that those are the 2 smartest, by the way. Little spoiler alert here. Then you also have maximize conversions, maximize conversion value, and you have enhanced CPC written on here, but that's a little bit.
That's still technically on Google support page as of April when we recorded this. So I wanted to include it there, but that was technically a flavor of smart bidding, but that ended on March 31st, 2025,
Right.
RIP in peace.
And I would say it was smart light.
Agree.
It could raise or lower your bid if it thought there was going to be a conversion, which was really nice, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a smart bid strategy like the other ones.
And we're going to go into what isn't smart bidding, but I have a bone to pick.
Okay.
Do you remember when Google Ads went through and changed all the names of smart bidding? And they're like, TCPA is not TCP anymore. It's now
Sorry.
maximize conversions with target CPA.
Should I go back and redefine them?
No, I feel like they got rid of it. This is from their
Oh.
website. This is literally from their help document. And I don't recall an announcement saying it changed back.
Right. But it's definitely still set up that way in the platform. When you select maximize conversions, it then has the checkbox of
Yes.
whether or not you want to apply a target CPA. So it's like 2 different layers of maximize conversions. And then the same with TROAS and maximize conversion value.
Right. But sometimes with maximize conversions, or sometimes you have like even maximize conversion value, let's say. Sometimes it just is like, what is the percentage you want back? And I don't know, like, it's just tough to figure out if you still actually can do maximize conversion value. I think that whole handling of it is a disaster, because one thing that's really important to know, target CPA is much different than maximize conversions. And I never understood why they clumped them together, because they operate so wildly different.
Agreed.
Okay, so we're just going to call them as it is on the help document for Google Smart Bidding. We're not going to say maximize conversion value, TROAS flavor. They're just going to be their own 4 unique things that it seems like Google is now trending back towards. Okay, so what isn't smart bidding, Shep? Because I feel like some of the naming conventions make people think that they are doing something smart when in reality it's quite dumb.
Yeah, I would say dumb bidding strategies. There's just, like,
Yeah, what's dumb bidding?
So it's just anything that doesn't necessarily have your conversion action in mind in your account, unless your conversion action is clicks or impressions. So maximize clicks might be the scariest one. When your goal is just to get as many clicks as possible, if you're using that with close variance or, God forbid, broad match, I don't like that. So that's one non-smart bidding strategy. And then the other one would be manual CPC, which is just setting your bid based on whatever Google's recommendations are in the platform and competitive metrics and seeing what happens at the auction.
Yeah. And one note, we're going to kind of look at this from, I'd say, a traditional SEM standpoint. So there are other things like app installs and all that. We're just kind of going to look at the main search items here. And to me, on those like click focused ones, I think maximize clicks is what throws a lot of people. We were consulting with another agency for a client that we have, and one of our recommendations was, you guys need to use smart bidding. What are you doing? Where a month later, there is no smart bidding, but they still have maximize clicks on. I don't know if they think maximize clicks is smart bidding, but it is absolutely not smart bidding.
I have talked to some smart people who say that they use it when they launch a new campaign and they want to get a lot of conversion data in quickly so they can then optimize. I would rather start with like a maximize conversions or maximize conversion value and then add that target CPA or target ROAS. Starting with max clicks, I'm just, again, we'll test anything, but it's a good way to spend money fast is the only upside.
Yeah. And just one caveat to the way that we operate a lot at Cypress North is people come to us when they are looking for more performance out of their campaigns and they might be struggling for one reason or another. I would say we don't, in the past 2 or 3 years, at least I don't know of a time where we've started a campaign from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Like we usually get like the troubled children and come in and try to rehabilitate, right? So I do think our approach might be a little bit different if we were starting from scratch, saying we have no conversions in the account. Maybe we do a manual CPC campaign and a maximize clicks just to get some data flowing through, especially if we have like exact match terms or very specific shopping. Actually, I don't even know if you can use max clicks on shopping. I would never, ever do that in a million years.
You could, I think.
Okay, so the click focused is maximize clicks and manual CPC.
Right.
Okay, so we'll get into how we might use those in a minute. Are there any other bidding types?
So the other one that you'll see on the search side is target impression share. So this, you are telling Google what spot you want to be in the SERPs, whether it's that very first position or a top of page. I think you can do it for bottom of page too. Spoiler alert, we don't use this. And then you tell them what percentage of the time you want to be in that spot. So you could say, I want to be in that spot 100% of the time or any percentage that you want. This one is crazy to me. I feel like if you were in a super competitive category and like, I don't know. I think politicians, and that's it. Personally, like that's a vanity metric to me. Like I care about conversions, not impression share. So I would never even need to test this for any of my clients personally.
Yeah, and we were just auditing an account that was using target impression share for brand, and I can sort of see that, but brand especially is so nuanced,
right?
In general, where if you've got a lot of people searching for your brand, that could make sense that you want to be at a certain impression share. I still think there's better options.
And if a lot of people are searching for your brand, they're not all going to convert. You don't want to pay for those people.
Right. It does get tricky. You and I have a client that has a name with an actual keyword appended at the end. And for something like that, like we have to spend a lot on brand because there is a very expensive term at the end of the name.
Yeah.
So think like you are Easton baseball bat. If that was their entire name, that would be that.
Right.
You know, somebody's looking for a baseball bat. And in some of those cases, it might make sense to do a test. But to be candid, we do not use target impression share. I just do not think it drives meaningful results. And really, this is one of those areas where having an expert can make a lot of sense to say, okay, how is our increased brand spend translating to our organic traffic, our organic revenue? And we had a client where we're looking at Q1, didn't have all the data because there was a 14-month retention, but our performance from CPC and Google Analytics It was off by about 5 or 6% because of a tracking error, but we were down 26% in revenue from PPC.
Sounds bad.
On the organic side, they were up 99% because we pulled so much back from brand. They were spending the majority of their budget was being spent on branded terms. And overall, from the source of Google, their volume was up 15%, 14.9%, but 15%. And that was $2.5 million in a 30-day period.
Right. That's why I feel like if you have brand campaigns, it's almost more important. Well, it's always important, but you need a smart bid strategy because you don't want the people who are looking for returns or a job or anything else. And smart bidding is the only way to make sure you're mainly showing for those people and Google's going after those people more.
Right. And we can get into it, but we've faced a client that was essentially having their brand attacked by another competitor bidding up on every version of their name. And we tried a lot of things. It wasn't target impression share that was the final answer that we came to.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Okay.
And then the other visibility focus we skipped over because these are more video based. CPM, where you're paying per 1,000 impressions. Target CPM, where you have a target for that price for 1,000 impressions. And then VCPM is per viewable impressions. And those are for video campaigns only.
Okay. So now that we know what is smart bidding and what isn't smart bidding, I want to talk about getting started with smart bidding. And if you're not on smart bidding at the moment, I would say that you are behind. Honestly, it's hard for me to say this, but the performance is there because to me, smart bidding is scary in a way that you allow the ad platform to choose the amount that you bid, while also your competitor is likely using smart bidding, and that same ad platform is choosing how much your competitor can bid. And I think that's one reason that we've seen CPCs rise. And I would say that if you are using one of the non-smart bidding methods, you will likely see your CPCs increase. And that's something getting into this, you should know. Mm-hmm. But the bigger issue is that you shouldn't be showing, or you should be spending less for things that Google doesn't think are going to convert. And you just should know heading into this that your CPCs are likely to rise, but what do we care about more?
Probably my cost per acquisition or my return on ad spend, ideally.
Exactly. So that's the caveat going into this here. And really, one thing I would say that you should have is a solid amount of conversions or conversion value that you have in the account before you turn smart bidding on. And like I mentioned before, we don't have a lot of fresh accounts, but if I did have a fresh account, I wouldn't start with smart bidding. Especially I wouldn't start with any of the targets, the TCPA or TROAS. If I did have to start fresh with anything, I would go after maximize conversion or maximize conversion value. I have done that in the past. The account had a lot of conversion data, even though that new campaign didn't, and it's worked for me. I wouldn't recommend it necessarily. I think for the most part, you need a lot of conversions in your account. Mm-hmm. So, how would you start a campaign if let's say you're in lead gen and you're a fresh account? What would you maybe use? How would you get to smart bidding?
So I'm not, again, for a fresh account. Back in the day, I might have used eCPC to try to have that smart bidding light, as we talked about, but unfortunately that's gone. So if it's not a fresh account, usually I'm going to start for lead gen when all of the conversion values are the same. So a lead is a lead and they're all worth $100, or a sales qualified lead is a sales qualified lead and they're all worth $500. And there's no nuance with that. I would start with maximize conversions. The most important thing with maximize conversions is that you have a really small budget, especially to start, because you are telling Google Ads with that bid strategy that they can spend your budget every day, no matter what, and just bring in as many conversions as possible. So unlike some other options on this list, it's not really scalable. You can't just have maximize conversion value and see performance there and just keep raising the budget. Eventually, you're going to hit a plateau where you don't get more conversions.
Yeah, and I would likely test a few different options. I think that's a great way to go. Another way to go, especially if we didn't have any volume in the account and we weren't sure, is if we did something like a manual CPC with exact match.
Mhm.
And we know from just the volume that comes in to a certain page from our reporting in Search Console, and then looking at that page in Google Analytics, if there's a term that we know is working, converting really well, we can use that SEO data and say, this is a great term for us. We know this is what people are looking for. This is our exact fit. I would be okay saying, let's do a manual CPC for this because we know it's so dialed in. You should never, ever, ever use broad match without smart bidding. Ever. Do you agree to that statement?
I agree.
Okay.
So I would launch with phrase and exact match with those two options I mentioned, and then maybe test broad match later when I could use smart bidding. Another good thing about both of those bid strategies that we mentioned is the other smart bid strategies, which we do like in a lot of situations. You need a target, whether it's ROAS or CPA. And if you're just starting out, you might not know what an attainable target is. So once you see what works from maximize conversions or manual CPC, that can be kind of a baseline. And then you can set your target goals from there and try to get more efficient with those other bid strategies.
Yeah. And another thing I would say is if you are starting out and trying to get those conversions in, experiments can be your friend, where you can literally just try a different bid strategy and say, I'm going to do a manual CPC and I'm going to do a maximize clicks.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see what's going to drive the most conversions and go that route. So really just getting some conversion data can be good. I would never, to your point, start with a target CPA or a target ROAS. If you have to use smart bidding to start, I would use maximize conversion value or maximize conversions.
Right.
You on the same page?
Yes.
Cool. That's nice. That's easy. Okay. So I think you touched on something that's really interesting where, at least to us, a client typically falls into, they have a budget scarcity or a budget excess. And some people are, we need more top line. We need more top line, as much as you can spend and get back. Let's do that. Or some people are, the budget is the budget and you need to make it work. And sometimes it's not as high as we would like. So out of these four major smart bidding types, and there's really two, there's really the target types and the maximize types.
Right.
Is there one that you would lean into for, let's say, if you have a budget scarcity?
For scarcity, I would use the maximize types. So to talk about an e-commerce example now, maximize conversion value is e-commerce based. So, or you could use it for lead gen. Google Ads wants you to, but we don't have to get into that today. Everyone who makes a purchase on your site, it might be for various products. They're worth different prices and revenue for your company. And it's going to take that into account and try to get the most value back. So again, that can work better with lower budgets, where if you have, especially for target CPA, I found that if I have to have a $500 target CPA and that's what I want to pay for a lead, if I have to set a budget smaller than that and I'm trying to tell Google to get leads back for a higher value than what I can spend in a day, it just doesn't usually work. So the maximized ones are better for scarcity.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's something that a lot of people get wrong when it comes to the maximize smart bidding options. You mentioned it before, it will spend your entirety of the budget. When you say maximize conversions, you are literally telling Google to do anything Google possibly can to get you more conversions. You are not telling it to be efficient. The only efficiency toggle that you have with that is your budget. If you have a spend of, let's say, a daily budget of $1,000, think of it like this. You're telling Google to bring you back as many conversions as possible. It might spend $250 and drive a conversion off of this. Let's say it's a lead gen client. And if it's at the end of the day, maybe it starts rolling up $200 CPCs because its job that day is to maximize as many conversions as it can get. And it's listening to the orders that you're giving. So if there's one takeaway only that you get from this podcast, is your budgets cannot be too high when you're using the maximize smart bidding type.
Mm-hmm. If budget is a concern. Sometimes I'll have clients who need to spend a certain amount, and maximize conversions will be a better option because I need to spend this much in a day.
Right. But even then, I don't think you would say the budget should be 3x of what it normally would be, because then you're going to lose so much efficiency that it's not worth it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I would just know you're going to see really, really high CPCs if your budget is too high with any of the maximize types.
Mhm.
Okay. And then from a budget excess, where somebody is looking to get as much possible, would you use something like the maximize flavors or the target flavors?
That's when I would use the target flavors. That's what they're so great for, because you're telling Google what your exact goal is. And if you have a lot of money to spend, for some industries, sometimes you don't need a lot of money to spend, but you can set really high daily budgets and still have your target CPA in there as a guide to tell Google like how much you are willing to spend for a lead. And Google's not going to spend your budget if it can't get leads in for that price. So you can give it a super high daily budget and know that if the leads are coming in, they will come in. But it's almost that CPA and that ROAS is more of the budget lever than the actual budget in those situations. So it's really great for clients who have a lot of money to spend.
Yeah. And if you're not in accounts all day long, it's hard to understand that the levers are completely different between the types.
Yeah.
The lever for target is literally the target. And then the lever for maximize is your budget.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that a lot of people get wrong, and why I never understood, like I talked about before, why they combined the names at one point.
Yeah,
It
it makes everything confusing.
Yeah, but it's nice. You could have, in that case we talked about before with maximize, where we know it's going to spend $1,000 a day. The CPCs can be $200, whatever. You gave it permission to spend that much and to maximize it. If your budget might be, let's say, $1,000 a day and you're on TCPA, and an average CPA that you're seeing throughout the year might be $500, your budget's $1,000. And what if you set your target CPA to $5, Shep? How much do you think you would spend that day?
Nothing.
Nothing, right? That is the lever.
Yeah.
The lever is the target in the target options.
And you can use that in really smart ways. For lead gen, we have B2B clients and they want to, quotes, leave the lights on the weekends. They want to have ads running if somebody's searching for them and has the right keyword intent, but they don't want to be spending a lot of money on the weekends because most people aren't. We'll have weekend campaigns with really low CPA targets, and it allows us to control that spend and efficiency more.
Yeah, and same. I know we're on an account where we have off hours. I would say 85% of sales come in from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern, basically the day here in the US. And then on the outsides, we have high ROAS targets where we say our off hours campaigns, cool, we're still going to run it, but we might be asking 2x more than we're asking during the day to keep the lights on, to keep our visibility up, and it can work really well. All right. So when I know we talked about the budget aspect, but is there anything else that scenario maybe where you use maximize conversions or maximize conversions value? We talked about kind of starting up an account. That could be something. Anything else?
Budgets are tight, like we talked about. Those are the main ones for me.
Yeah. And for me, I think sometimes when we're trying to test something new, if we have like, hey, we've got this new promotion, or I want to see how this might work. For me, I like maximize conversion value and maximize conversions, because you know you're going to be limited, and Google is going to give its best effort to try to go get results. And we're going to get into this in a second, but we try to, I guess, graduate the majority of our campaigns away from maximize and into target. But I think from that starting standpoint, starting something up, testing something, trying a promotion, maximize conversion value or maximize conversions can be very, very helpful to get it going. And then at some point you can keep raising the budget. What will happen is, as you raise the budget, there's going to be a time when you stop being efficient, and so you can raise that budget, get it going. As soon as you stop seeing efficiency, boom, you graduated. Let's move you over to a target.
Yeah. That should be a recommendation. Graduate your campaign.
Yeah. Okay. And then what are some ways, I guess, that you use target return on ad spend or target CPA?
Meaning like
just different ways you mix it in your account.
Okay. So as we mentioned before, for CPA specifically, we have a lot of B2B accounts. So we want to have lower target CPAs on the weekends when we want things to be really efficient, or have lower CPAs in the late hours, early mornings. Another way that we'll do it is if we are using broad match. Again, the only way to do it is if you are using smart bidding, or else it can be a big waste of money. Broad match opens you up to anything that's related to the keyword on your keyword list, right? So you need to make sure Google has your goals in mind when you're doing that. So for all of our broad match campaigns, we're using smart bidding and we're being really aggressive about it. So we have a higher ROAS target on the e-commerce side, or we have a lower CPA on the lead gen side, and it makes it work really well. I feel like that's the biggest change for broad match, is just that smart bidding is getting better, really.
Yeah. And for me, I think, especially with shopping, there's a lot you can do with TROAS. And if you've listened to the show, Marketing Clock at all, we've talked about like really working on business objectives. And there could be a way, we're right now running through one client where we're coming up with better tiered structure, where we're going to look at things that are in stock. We're looking at different just top selling items. We're looking also at the margin of items. And I think that's something that you can think through, especially from a shopping standpoint with target return on ad spend, and use the intelligence and use your brain to figure out how you can achieve your client's objectives. And so if in that case, we know that it's something that we produce, let's say I'm Target and it's up and up brand, I might say that's going to be in that top tier. And I'm going to ask for a lower return because we have more margin, it's in stock and all those things. Then I might say, okay, well, this is a name brand. This is Chiquita Banana or something like that. And we don't make it, but it's in stock. We want to sell these things. That might be in tier 2. And then if we're Target, maybe we drop ship items, or we have really low margin on some items and we don't want to spend more, so we can have a higher target return on ad spend. So I think it's really just like figuring out what matters to your clients and pushing
another
that.
lead gen example. Sorry to cut you off.
No.
We see terrible performance on mobile for lead gen. Nobody likes to fill out a form on a phone. The pages often look terrible. It's often B2B. So we will use smart bidding to control device spend. And a lot of times we'll make separate campaigns for mobile only traffic, again, with a much lower target CPA. Or one of my favorite target CPA secrets that nobody talks about enough is if you go to your device bid adjustments in a target CPA campaign, it looks like it's letting you set bid adjustments, but you don't have a bid, right? Mm-hmm. That's another thing with smart bidding. Your bid adjustments will usually be ignored. But if you set a minus 50% bid adjustment, air quotes, for mobile or tablet, it's actually a CPA adjustment. It's lowering your target CPA for those devices. So for a tighter budget, that's a great option to control spend by device. And then if you have more money to spend, I like to separate out a separate mobile campaign.
And so you're saying if you have a campaign and your target CPA is $10, but you have a minus $50 adjustment, 50% adjustment on mobile, that is actually going to target $5. Yeah.
And it works. Like we see it in our accounts.
Yeah. Another way that I like using, at least, it's just hard with Maximize. Maximize is less advanced, I would say, of a bid type. But for something like TROAS, a lot of times as well, you don't have keywords when it comes to shopping, but using negatives and making your shopping a pure, scalable, incremental, non-brand, and using either your account brand. You probably don't want an account brand list, but a keyword negative list or negatives at the campaign level, and removing all brand, and then having another shopping campaign with a much higher return on ad spend, but including your brand. Again, with shopping, you don't have keywords, but what we see is we can get about 90% of the, again, double ROAS in that brand to be actual branded terms. So it's a way that, with shopping, especially somebody's looking for that product, it's not going to be just a general brand search for the most part. You can even negate just the exact match of your brand, but it'll help you cover some of that branded stuff that, again, if it's a product name and your brand, that is like branded search and branded shopping that I'm okay with. Mm-hmm. Because the minute that I type in, Nike running shoes, I know running shoes are in there and I want to protect that. I care a little bit less about Nike because somebody's looking for me. But when we have running shoes in there, you are open season to have all of your competitors be there. All right. So there are some guardrails for smart bidding. Shep, do you want to talk about any of those?
Sure. So I think the biggest one is back to what you said earlier, Greg, about how a big problem with this smart bidding is that you don't have control over what your actual bid is. And in certain industries, or maybe for certain brand names, CPCs can be really, really high and it can hurt performance. So if you need more efficiency out of your campaigns, you can set a max CPC for your smart bid campaigns. But there's a trick to it. Google wouldn't ever make this easy. It is easy in Microsoft.
Yes, very easy.
You have to set up a portfolio bid strategy. And in that portfolio bid strategy, it'll be maximize conversions or maximize conversion value or target CPA or target ROAS. And you can then, there's a little drop down box where you can set a max CPC for any campaigns within that portfolio.
And a min CPC.
Oh, forgot about that. Don't forget your min. But the thing that is the key to this is you could have a portfolio bid strategy of one if you really wanted to, and just have your branded campaign in there and say, I don't want to spend more than $5 a click on my brand name, or whatever keywords are really competitive. You could just have that one campaign in there and have a max CPC for that.
Yeah. Another thing I would say is with smart bidding, you are asking Google to go find value. And it does a great job at that. Sometimes too good of a job. And sometimes what you see coming in is the easiest stuff. I call it the lowest common denominator. When you have smart bidding, it's going to go out. If you've got a big product catalog and there's one thing that sells very easily and is cheap, and then you've got another product in the same campaign or same ad group that is a high price product that's hard to sell, you're not going to sell the hard to sell product. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with branded terms. If you do not remove your brand terms, if it's something you're trying to be scalable on, let's say it's not a brand campaign, you can find that you're going to skew heavily towards branded stuff because Google, it wants to make its job easy. It wants to do well by you. And you didn't tell it not to go after brand. So guess what? It's going to go after brand. And I think it's something we've seen a ton with Performance Max. It's like going after branded on steroids. So if you're using Performance Max, you now have negative keywords. Negative keyword lists are coming soon. And you have brand exclusions. So I would set up your negative keywords in there and also brand exclusions. It's a way to kind of steer your smart bidding towards going after that incrementality.
Right. Another really important guardrail for lead gen specifically, this kind of goes back to Google going after the easiest thing. A lot of lead gen accounts, they will have the goal, the conversion for the campaign be a form submission. So if you were doing that kind of conversion tracking with something like Broad Match and Smart Bidding turned on, sometimes you can get some crappy leads. It's a bigger problem with PMAX, but it happens in search too. So what can really take smart bidding to the next level is if you are integrating with your CRM and telling Google that your goal is a more qualified lead. So whatever your ideal customer profile is for your business, whether it's they're using a business email or however you set it up in your CRM, if you tell Google your actual goal is a sales qualified lead and you give it a CPA for what you want to pay for a sales qualified lead, it can work really, really well, even with these riskier things like Broad Match or PMAX.
Yeah, I go even so far to say there are campaign types, even with smart bidding, that I would never use unless I had like a down funnel conversion to MQL, SQL, op, whatever that is. And you hear it a lot where people say, don't use this, it doesn't work. If you are feeding Google a actual quality lead or an actual transaction with revenue, you can do whatever you want if it's getting you success.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of people do fail, is they'll say, I want to just do a form fill on the site. What's the lowest common denominator? People may be looking for careers. And because you're just tracking every form submitted on the site, it's looking like you're getting a lot of conversions, but you're getting a steaming hot pile of garbage.
Right. Even worse with PMAX, it happens with bots. If you're tracking
100%.
form submissions, it'll be a couple of days and you'll just get a ton of bots for a great CPA. But right. They're all garbage.
Yeah. And then you touched on this as well. One other thing that you can do is that I think can help a lot is if you're seeing a big discrepancy between your desktop and your mobile, you can just use campaigns the way you want. And I feel like people don't understand that. Like you know how I use campaigns. I use them any single way that I feel like. And you can set up a desktop campaign and then a mobile campaign, especially if you're seeing like mobile is spending more and the CPA is higher. Get it out of there.
Mm-hmm.
You can try to adjust it down with the percentage adjustments, but at some point you can just make a mobile campaign and then just make a desktop campaign and set your ask differently for each of those.
Right. If you have enough traffic and budget, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. And then search partner network.
Oh,
what are your thoughts, Shep?
Get it out of here. I hate it. Nothing nice to say.
No, it's the worst. The only time that I think search partner network can make sense is branded. If there's a different rat site out there that has a Google search bar and somebody's looking for your brand and you're using branded the right way, which is just exact match. If you have broad match in your brand term, it's not branded.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if people know that or not. It's audited an account and everything was broad match branded terms. And guess what? That was the one campaign that probably had the least amount of branded search. Everything else that was unbranded had all the branded search in because they didn't negative it out.
Yeah.
But I would turn off search partner network unless you wanted to test maybe on your brand name only if you're very exact with it. All right. Any other guardrails that you have?
Nope. Nothing else comes to mind.
All right. And then just talking a little bit about the adjustments. So we talked about the one lever when we're talking about maximize smart bidding types being the budget, and then the lever being your ask or your target for the target campaigns. How do you go about adjusting some of those target campaigns? Do you make big sweeping adjustments or are they smaller?
I try to keep them small. There are some exceptions if something crazy is happening, but for the most part, I try to keep it 10%, maybe even less. Again, on the CPA side, if I want to spend more, I'll raise the CPA a little bit. And if I want to spend less, I'll lower it a little bit. How about you?
Yeah, it's the same. I think like that 10% is healthy, and giving it time is important as well. And that's one thing that's so difficult that I feel like people at Google don't understand is that people are like under the gun with getting results and having their careers on the line and things like that. And we see it all the time where people are like, we need this now. And it's like, well, It doesn't really work like that. But I like those adjustments of really communicating with your client or your boss well, and knowing that, guess what, in this quarter, we are going to be a little bit less efficient and go towards more top line revenue and planning for that, and not taking something and saying, at one point we are asking 500% ROAS or 5x back, and then just dropping it to 2.5x back, but inching it down. And I think that I do not go over 20% ever when I adjust. I would rather tweak up and then continually tweak when it comes to the target side of things. And then on the maximize side of things, I don't really have an issue moving that up a little bit more. I will say you're going to see a big drop in efficiency if you move that up. But also moving it down, it's just going to spend that amount and try to get the most back. So I feel like it's very easy to move that down. And honestly, with smart bidding in general, if you had to give me an option, I every single time would try to become more efficient than less efficient, because it's just easier for Google to understand that. And it's tough too, because people and clients and maybe again, your boss or somebody like that will say, well, we need to spend more. And if you've really dialed in on some of these target smart bidding campaigns, it can be very hard to keep that efficiency. And if you take something that is a target CPA of $100 and you move it to $300, you might spend 3x the amount and have the same exact conversions, because that's literally what you're telling it to do.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really trying to figure out how can you spend more and find that efficient frontier of volume and efficiency. And at some point there's too much volume with no efficiency. And if you have efficiency with no volume, that's bad as well, because you're not getting sales. So that's always the way I look at it, is like, where's that kind of exact balance point on a teeter-totter? And is that how you say it? Teeter?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you say something?
Seesaw.
Seesaw. That's what I meant to say. So you're at a seesaw, and it's always like, when you're at that point where you feel like you're really balanced, to me, that's always where I'm looking to get to. And then whenever we're looking to spend more, I don't like messing with the seesaw. I like coming up with different ideas. You know, like, is there a different audience that we can target? And maybe it's going to take away from that a little bit, some of the spend, but okay, we're going to go after people that are business and industrial based. How do we add more? I just don't think that once you get to a very dialed in target CPA campaign, that you can really do a ton more. I like additive stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And then this has been great, by the way. I hope people are enjoying this. I'm having a lot of fun. And what would you say the percentage of campaigns that you manage are on smart bidding?
100%.
I
don't have any manual right now.
If you asked me a month ago, I had a few manuals because we had an issue tracking phone calls, and we knew that some products, because of the freight and the cost, think about a $15,000 product that doesn't really make it online. That online sale, a lot of times it comes from the phone. We had those on manual because of a client request. We don't anymore. So I think I'm 100% as well.
Yeah. Without ECPC.
And when we did have ECPC.
Yeah, I was using that.
Yes. But that also is smart bidding.
Right.
Technically. Light. Smart bidding light, or whatever you said. Okay. And so, Shep, any final parting words for somebody that has made it this far in 2025 and is yet to attempt smart bidding?
I would say you're amazing that you've made it this far without it. And I'm so excited for you that you just get to make your accounts so much more efficient and optimized with smart bidding, because it is truly a game changer for advertisers, especially, again, with ECPC gone. In most categories, smart bidding is going to be the way to go. So I'm excited for you. Give it a try.
And if I were to talk to those folks as well, I would say, give smart bidding a try if you have solid conversions.
Yeah.
If you're tracking something like a page view as a conversion or a button click as a conversion, do not use smart bidding. You need to get your conversions in order. All those things are fine if they're secondary, but smart bidding works when you have good data, as you mentioned before. And if you're trying to get into it, you should make sure that those conversions you have are down funnel conversions. There's a lot of friction on those conversions, and it's something like a sale. That's easy. But on the lead gen, demand gen side of things, it's how do we get quality? And I will tell you what, a page view is not quality. And if you are listening to this now and said, well, they told us to use smart bidding. No, I'm saying to use smart bidding if you have good conversions. And I think that is one key that people continuously, they listen, but they don't hear.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's something that everybody should be concerned about.
Very important caveat.
All right. Anything else, Shep?
No, I'm just so excited for everyone to see the new set. It is beautiful. You're going to love it.
Yes. And thank you so much for bearing with us here in our transition show. We have an unbroken streak going back about 4 or 5 years now, and we wouldn't leave you hanging on a Friday. So I wanted to have get you something delivered this week. And Monday, tune in. New set, new show, new us.
See you Monday.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Marketing O'Clock. If you're looking for more information on today's topics, head over to marketingoclock.com/newsletter to receive every single article we covered. We share the news as it breaks in our Discord community. Head over to community.marketingoclock.com to join.